Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're the Heretic Sisters, and I am the hopeful heretic. I'm interested in exploring all the frequencies with the hope of revealing something higher than our limited minds can grasp. Questions I'm pondering: what is the truth? Can we have both an individual truth and a shared truth? Is it possible to be an individual within a group? What is our individual versus shared responsibilities? Is shared and balanced equity possible?
Hi, I'm Tatiana and the fearful heretic. I'm all about getting to the bottom of things. At the same time, I can be superficial because I want to try everything at once. Questions I'm pondering. How do one see reality without distortion? How to embrace all the blooming complexities of life? How to express my experiences in creative work? The question, what's it all for, has not left me since I was a teenager.
Okay, so our episode today is really fascinating and a great episode with our first visitor, Kerry Lee, and we had a call out to people, other heretics, when we first started the show because we were interested in not just talking about ourselves, but to also bring in other people that we could talk with and explore different themes around. And one of those initial people who said, "Yeah, I'm game. I'd like to come to this show." I looked at her chart and I was like, okay, this is perfect. This is a perfect person to bring on to talk about some of the themes that also show up in Tatiana's nice chart differently, but still around the theme of creativity and individuality. We have creative channels and individual channels. And when I saw Kerry Lee's chart, I was like, okay, she's perfect. And right away, Kerry Lee started to send me stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is just exactly what we need. Just so much stuff about her that was really inspirational and really brought her chart to life. And I just want to give a brief synopsis she gave me. Not a brief, it's a little bit of a long biography, but she's got so much in her life and she's so inspiring that we could probably bring her on to a couple of episodes, and we'll probably go into a lot of it today, but I'm going to try to cram in as much as we can. But she's got such an interesting life and it's so inspiring that we could probably create a couple of episodes. I would think at least a few episodes with her. So I just wanted to read her biography, and then we'll look at her chart, and then we'll hand it over to Kerry Lee to talk a little bit more, to ask her some specific questions. So Kerry Lee feels she has lived many lives in this life, and they were all preparing her to be equipped for living a life in alignment with her human design. She believes her purpose is to help make a difference in people's lives through creating art, her own art, and facilitating transformative healing art experiences as well. She was a creative entrepreneur as a young girl, making beautiful cupcakes and selling them in her neighborhood door to door, creating press-on earrings in middle school for friends whose parents would not let them have pierced ears, and winning art contests in between. Life took her in a different way as a young teen when she felt she became lost from herself due to conforming to cultural programming. She got a degree in business and went on to become an event planner and then to business sales in several industries, and had conventional success, yet never truly loved her work. In her 40s, she co-founded a coffee house and micro roastery where she deeply realized she had a 35-year case of creative constipation for her own creative expression. Life threw her an interesting curve with divorce and loss of a coffee business and losing everything financially at 49 years old, with $1,000 to her name. The time to make big changes in life was presented, and she was all in. After years of exploration and discovery, today, Kerry Lee facilitates healing bedside art at Stanford Hospital and is creating a pilot program to build community for patients and visitors through art, offers corporate team building events to create community and vision the future, has her work in art galleries and at her own online gallery and gift shop, and is working on her home building project, The Intentional Home. And you can find her at kerryleeart.com. And she also, I will link this below if you want to visit her, but she's got such an inspiring story. We'll talk a little bit about that, but you can find out more on her website, which I'll link below. So I wanted to look at her human design chart first, because this is what we saw and I didn't have any other information. And as you can see, she's got the channel 1222. That was immediately the thing that popped out at me. And I said, okay, she's artistic in some way, because it's a very creative channel, and it's an individual creative channel. It's half conscious. And then she's got the integration channel, the channel of exploration, and also wanting to following one's own convictions, and then she's got the design of being in the flow, and also the mating channel, which brings in and ties in the work that she does with others. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, how that shows up in her astrology chart too. But I saw this and I was like, okay, definitely want to bring her on. And she started sending me this information, just a lot of information about what she had been doing lately. And she talked about this creative constipation in that. I didn't know anything about the timing. She had sent dates that were a lot later than her Chiron return. And but I was like, something happened here in your Chiron return. I want to better understand what was happening that made you make this change, which was going from this corporate environment into a more intentional creative work, which she's been doing since her Chiron return. So my first question to her, which I'll hand the baton over to her, which was around this creative constipation and how that developed. And then she told me about her experience with her Chiron return. So we'll talk about that. But before I put it to Kerry Lee, I just want to ask Tatiana, did you have anything specific to say before I hand it off to Kerry about her chart?
About her chart. So I'm really interested in how the 515 channel works in here. This is a channel of reading, but I suppose this is a channel that also manifests as possibility to involve others easily into the process. So like to be the center of a crazy whirlpool that involves other people, attracts them and shows them the direction, even in some way. But I suppose this belongs to later questions, that we can ask. And I'm truly interested in this channel of mating and intimacy channel and gate 59 that demonstrates, that represents her true essence, her creative self in it. But I suppose we can also talk about it at the later stage. And of course, it is important to notice that gate 22 is her personality sun line 5. So this is a creativity that definitely stays in the very center of your personality. And this is the thing that defines you. And we would love to know how you lived through this wonderful chart.
Okay, Kerry, I'd love for you to talk about your what happened during this time of your Chiron return around 50 that spurred you into discovering that you had this creative constipation and you were going to lean in hard to all of the creative things that you were suppressing and kind of investing in more in the corporate world. I'd love to hear more about that experience.
Sure. That was the hardest time of my life, and also the most, one of the most important times in my life. And at that time, I was going through divorce. I had lost this coffee house and coffee roastery in the divorce that I helped build. And I was basically having to start over again like I was 25 years old, because I'd also lost everything financially. And so it was at that point, I just thought, well, what do I want from my life going forward? I don't want how it has been. And this inner artist was just screaming, let me out. Let's explore who this artist is that I've had since I was a little girl. And because pretty much I lost everything except for my relationships and my health for the most part, I thought, why not? And so that is when I started this journey of self-discovery. And I knew I wanted to reclaim that artist And I also wanted to do work that made a difference in the world. I hadn't felt like my work had made a difference in the world.
Okay, great. There was a couple of things that you asked me to ask you about
Okay.
during this time. You said you basically had some creative exploration during your founding this coffee place. You did some creative stuff, like you hosted live music, you hosted artists, you had an annual employee art show, you discovered feng shui during this experience. But you weren't fully living it. So tell me a little bit more about what that means to you. Like, what was it? Was it that you were investing so much in other people that you weren't really integrating it into your own expression?
Yes, yes. So building the coffee house was very much my own creative expression in terms of the colors, the branding, the design, and all that. But once it was built, I was hosting monthly art shows for other artists. I was bringing in musicians to play Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and hosting the musicians. So I was really the business brain still, and I wasn't being the artist part of myself. And while it was satisfying because I had my fingers in it, it wasn't deep enough. You know what I mean? In terms of my own progression as an artist. I didn't know that at that time. It was sort of the right thing at the right time. It wasn't really until all of that ended that I then went further on my own journey. Feng Shui, though, at that time was super important because I come from a very scientific family background. And so the concept of, energy and movement and where you place things and the cures that you can do to fix things that aren't quite right was very foreign to me, but also super fascinating to me. And because we had a hard time getting the coffee house open and off the ground, I knew of a feng shui consultant and went to her. And the first day we opened the doors, it was absolutely magical. All of the things that came into place from what we did to put the energy in the right place to open the doors. We were across from a hospital. It was to be actually a healing place, which I just realized that, right? It was healing creativity even then. And people would come in, writers would come in and say they'd never felt more creative than when they were in our coffee house. There was crystals inside the walls, inside the drywall, intentions written, on the walls that before we painted, all that kind of thing. And that was just naturally who I am, which is a big part of what I do today. But because I didn't quite buy into it, I really experimented with some of the cures. And so, for example, we were gifted a 9-foot metal, like sculptural tree, and it went into the corner that was helpful people. And it was a glass corner that you could see on the street. And I lit it up with Christmas lights, and you could see it for blocks down each side. And as soon as I activated that corner, we had money come to us out of nowhere with anonymous notes saying you're doing a good thing for the community. And there I was, community building, and not realizing that's part of who I am. And this happened twice, and it just said, keep going. We hope this helps. And so it was really fun to play with these cures that I was told to do. And I started calling it playing catch with the universe. And so I was, by researching and doing my own scientific experiments in a way, I was learning that, oh my gosh, this is something. And so that launched me into more esoteric studies, we could say, and really embracing what we can't see.
That's interesting. So tell me about what was it? So you started to build this magical thing with your husband.
Yeah.
And you guys, how long was it into your business that things started to crumble? And can you share a little bit about what it was that started to crumble and why?
Well, yeah, I won't go too far into it, but we were into it a few years. We opened in 2004, 2008, the recession hit. So that hit us hard. Also, we had a pretty dysfunctional business relationship, which we didn't realize before we opened the door. And I won't go into details. I don't want to point fingers, but it didn't work. And then it affected our personal life. And now, in retrospect, I believe our journey was not meant to be forever. We created a beautiful human being who has invited me to live next door to her now. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
part of it was amazing. That journey with the coffee house gave me the bravery and the experience to go out on my own. I never would have done what I'm doing now without having that experience with him. So lots of good things from it. But
That's
not-
so, I find that fascinating because whenever I think about, whenever you look, it's easy to look at retrospectively back at your life. But when you look at the building and the foundations that happen and the people that you meet, they always prepare you for the next step. And I do definitely, you had the panel meeting, you had a child out of that, like you said, you got together for a purpose and you fulfilled that purpose. And it's very much in your, I want to talk about your astro chart because it's very much tied to your astrological chart as well. We saw some patterns there. But it was really interesting because I saw that your Chiron was basically on your midheaven, and it was conjunct Venus, very close to Venus. And in your human design chart, you see this show up in your gate 30. With your Venus, they're in different lines, but you also have your design Chiron in 49, gate 49, line 5, which is our sun. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, wow, that's an intro. I always notice these patterns. And so here we're talking.
What does that mean exactly? Because I don't know all of those. So,
well,
just revolution, simply a revolution. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a body revolution, like you were here, you design revolution that came out during this crisis, and it was tied to your career, tied to your relationships, and tied to money. And how it relates to us is you're here talking about it, so I just thought it was fascinating because here we our Chiron return is next week. And here you are, you have this beautiful Chiron story, which I didn't even really think was going to happen because I was like, oh, creativity and individuality. And then I noticed your Chiron, you were on the cross of tension is where your Chiron return happened. So it was basically this explosion that happened, this crisis that happened that forced you to face all of these issues that were probably going on for some time in your relationship.
Yep.
And tied to money, tied to relationship. You also have themes around relationships. So when you look at your chart, Chiron is here with Venus. So that's a theme. You've got to have freedom to explore. Venus is in Aquarius. You've got to be able to explore on your own and have freedom and autonomy over what you do. You also have, you said in your bio, which you just delivered to me, which is you felt like you've lived many lives. Yeah. So your South Node has your Sun and Mercury on your South Node. People who have nodal planets they say in past lives, but also in this life, if you don't believe in past lives, is that they have many lives. They've already been through these themes. They play out the themes over and over. It takes you a little while to really reach your pinnacle of your sun's energy. And you're ruled by Jupiter. Your South Node is ruled by Jupiter, which is right on your descendant. So it's about relationships. You receive a lot of growth and benefits through relationships, which is also a theme we'll go on a little bit later. But you have Saturn here, and that's another theme, which is you're learning lessons, and you have karma with relationships and specific relationships. Jupiter is applying to Saturn. So you're in this life really learning about how you balance yourself and what you give to people versus what are you trying to learn here for yourself. And then also you have this energy here, which is related to your Chiron, which is the moon Pluto. So there's a lot of fate that happens in your life, a lot of intensity that you're here to learn. And you're here, Virgo is about health and healing. And in your North Node is in your 4th house. So it's emotional healing, it's grief healing, which also shows up in your human design chart. I asked you, our next question, I asked you about, you talked about very early on how grief, you've got the nodes on 36, South Node on the 36 of crisis and the North Node and conflict. And you also have your your design nodes in, you know, the cross of love, which is the south node in the gate of innocence and the north node in the gate of determination. So there's this balancing act that you do between, okay, well, what is my creative expression for myself versus relationships, and what is my purpose? You've got your fifth house is your creative house. So, and it's ruled again by Libra, which is your relationships, and you've got Neptune here. So you're definitely learning a lot about relationships and the balance of relationships versus self, and what your creative expression is. And I want to stop talking and ask Tatiana if she has anything else to add there.
I would love, if you don't mind, Susan, just to get a little bit back to this Chiron situation. Yeah. And
yeah.
Could you tell us, Kerry, about these 24 girlfriends who banded together and helped you during this crisis? This is really interesting stuff. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Before I go there, I just want to point out one thing. Behind me, I'm going to lift up the camera a little bit. There's a drum that's painted. At the top of that drum, it says freedom. Like that is the word I chose for my drum. So yeah, spot on.
Nice.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yes.
So when my marriage was ending, we set a date that it was time to move, and I don't want to go too far off track here, but I started looking. Back then it was on Craigslist, and found this amazing place on the water. Like, I call it healing waters, beautiful sunrise to sunset view on the water. And I was working full time and dealing with, you know, end of an 18-year marriage and packing and a kid, you know, all of those things. And the landlords were amazing human beings. And when I went inside of this beautiful home that I was going to, in-law unit really, that I was going to move into, it had the sponge painting of the 80s, you know, mauve and gray sponge painting. And it really didn't do the place justice. And the landlord said, "What do you think of the paint?" And I was nice. I'm like, it's okay, you know. But they said, "Well, we don't really love it, but if you want to paint it, we will buy the paint." There was no way I had the bandwidth to paint in basically an apartment. And so I put out an email to my community that I'd lived in for many, many years, asking for help. And while I was working and dealing with my own life, 24 girlfriends showed up at this place and got it painted. And one of them was an interior decorator designer. And so she picked the colors to match what was being seen outside. And it was the most calming, healing, beautiful place. And I knew I would be fine being divorced, not having a partner, because 24 girlfriends showed up. The safety net was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was beautiful.
True magic of life. Yeah. So you
and immediately I knew I was going to be okay, you know?
Yeah. You have a beautiful trine with Jupiter and your moon, which brings a lot of just a beautiful positive energy that people really appreciate, that you bring into their lives, and you get a lot of benefits from that. When you, like you said, when you learned how to let the universe kind of show up in your life and to really trust that things were going to work out without having to control anything, then it just kind of shows up, and you just have to trust that at each stage, right?
This is one of my biggest learning lessons, is trusting and not trying to control. And it's continue and constant. And I find that the deeper I surrender to not being, quote, in control, which we have free will, but we don't really have control as far as I'm concerned. And the further I would surrender into just being in the moment, then the more miraculous things would happen. And it continues that way. And it's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
Of course. Yeah, we do understand you. It's totally not easy.
Yeah. So it's very inspiring, I have to say, your whole story and your life and how that shows up. Not everybody has those aspects, you know? So it's hard to say, you know, oh, just trust to some people and you'll get like 24 friends, because not everybody's built for that.
Right.
And that's amazing to me that you had, that's a testament to who you are and to how people honor you and what you've given into relationships to have that many people. But it's also kind of naturally a part of who you are. So it's not like you you've done anything specifically. It's just who you are
Yes,
and
I
how you.
agree. It's a
Because
gift.
it is.
I've been given this
Mhm.
gift. I didn't earn it per se.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe I did
Oh,
some, but it's, yes.
this is you. Subconscious. I thought 515 is subconscious. So you do not have it here in your head, yeah, or somewhere. It just happens.
Yes.
How you feel it. Yeah, it is. People are simply around you because they feel themselves comfortable and charismatic. Yes, well,
Charismatic and magnetic and inspiring. My son has the 515, so I know a little bit about it. So
yeah,
yeah.
and for
So yeah,
example,
sorry.
I wanted to just to add that two teachers of human design from Ukraine, who were one of the first disciples of Ra and his students and so on, they both had 515, and they involved enormous amount of people into just because they were so inspired. They even, it was not a propaganda. They were so deep into this experience that a lot of people followed them, and probably the ones who taught me in Russian. Yeah, that's how it works, and it is unconscious in you, but it works definitely. One can notice. Yeah.
Yeah, so the next thing that I noticed, very specifically, the question that came up to me was that of your notes, your 30, and there was one thing that you said to me when you first started delivering the experience about how when you were really young, you had created this painting from JFK's funeral, and you were like, what, 4 years old?
Three.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, that's very symbolic of this, 36-6 channel. And I was like, okay. And then I started to hear the ways that it showed up in your art later and how you were integrating that into your healing practices. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that, how that showed up in your life, and then how you were called to do it a little bit more intensely.
Okay. And actually, there's something I didn't tell you that I want to show that I think is an important link in this story from when I was a young child and fully in my creative self, I'll say. And then when around 14-ish, 13-ish, I was told it's time for science and chemistry, and sort of took me out of that part of me. But when I started this new path I'm on, I'll say 11 years ago, a painting was found in the attic of the home I grew up with, and I pulled it off the wall here. And this is the painting I did at about that same age, 13, 14 years old. And this painting actually predicted my future. And it was lost in the attic of my family home for 35 years. And the reason I say it predicted my future is this was a self-portrait. There's an underpainting. This is the method I use in some of my teaching. It's a symbolic self-portrait that I teach people to do for themselves. Anyhow, there's an underpainting in here, and it's stairs and doors underneath her. I don't know why they're there. I don't know how this happened. I don't remember painting her. She has red thread in her hair. There is, in the culture that I'm in, the intentional creativity community, there's a red thread proverb that says, everyone who's destined to meet is connected by an invisible red thread. That thread may stretch or tangle, but never break. And it's all over. That's community as I see it. At the time we found this, I had a streak in my hair, this pink color. No one in the 70s put color in their hair. I don't know what this was about. My paintings typically have cosmos in them and wild things in the hair and symbolic. But the biggest thing about this painting is she has no eyes. I don't know why. I never got to the eyes. And she was literally stuck in the family attic until I sort of found myself again 35 years later at the same time I found her. So today when I was looking around before we started and I saw her on the wall, she talks to me, pull me down. I'm a part of this story. So I just wanted to share that real quick.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah. And you know what? I just want to share a little bit of this with you, Kerry. The red thread. I saw that later. That's a Mary Magdalene symbol, the red thread too. And funny enough, when I was trying to figure out our picture for this Heretic Sisters, I had this notion about the red thread. And I had that in I was doing this AI exploration. Okay, well, how can we symbolize this picture of us? And some of the choices were red thread involved. So I just wanted to share that with you because
I love it.
There's an invisible thread.
I love it. Yeah. Okay, so getting back on track and going forward to today, is that the question?
Yes.
And what I'm doing today. Okay. So like I said, I've done so many things. And, you mentioned the work with grief and death that I've done. This is not something I've chosen to do at all. I just know there's over time, over the past 11 years, this pattern of this work coming to me, this healing work in a sense. I'm not a grief counselor. I'm absolutely empathetic and a good ear and all kinds of things. And I can connect with people pretty quickly. That's another gift given. Details of this are on my Patreon site if somebody wants to see the work that's come. But right now I'm working at Stanford Healthcare's hospital, and I'm working with bedside with patients and just helping them in the moment go from high anxiety and stress to being calm, or from boredom to being inspired, or simply from being lonely to having companionship. All it's simple and it's in the moment. But it can be profound. I recently worked with a young man who was having 18 seizures a day. He didn't consider himself an artist. The hour and a half he spent with me, his mom noticed something changed in the expression he gets in his eyes when he has a seizure. And he said his brain felt good during these 90 minutes. And the nurses came in and checked the chart that was connected to, to his brain, and sure enough, they could see it. And so I happened to bump into them on their way out of the hospital when he was leaving, and they were on my website, and they were planning on getting him the art supplies because this was his new medicine. And I was just like, oh my. So that works amazing. I'm only doing that 2 days a week, but that work just feels super amazing. And then I have to balance it with things that feel a little lighter, like corporate team building and this new thing I'm doing. I'm calling the intentional home. I'm building a home and layering intention and creative process and feng shui during the build, from the foundation to the walls to anyhow the whole energy of the home.
I wanted to ask you just a little bit about this, what I chose to present here, which is about New Zealand, and I wanted you to hear this story because it's a beautiful story.
It is. Yeah. So I was invited to go to New Zealand in 2014 to work with a friend, Rosie Mack, and she had gotten the agreement from the local government to paint a 75-foot mural. And we did these 7 trees, these intentional trees, and each one had a different theme. And about a week before we were done, the first ever mass shootings happened in Christchurch, New Zealand. It was quite a moment, to say the least. It was like when 9/11 happened in the United States. The country stopped. They had never been violated like they were with their first ever mass shootings. Well, this put our project on sort of hold a little bit so we could sort of finish it, actually. And the day of a week later, when we did have the unveiling, we had decided to make the peace tree into sort of a memorial of sorts for the victims. And we painted hearts, under the red heart at the bottom and the roots, we put thumbprints for each of the people who lost their lives. And our plan was to add a green pencil mark, like a dot that we made with a pencil, which were also all around the lines of the tree, and those represented people. And so we were going to put a green dot on each of the thumbprints to represent paradise, which is where the Muslims believe that their beloveds go when they die. Well, during this unveiling ceremony, or not call it a festival because it didn't have that vibe to it that day, but this this event, up walked these 2 men, and they were from the North Island. We were on the South Island, and they were grave diggers, and they had been flown down to the South Island to help dig the graves because there was so many. Their country had never had that kind of a need. And when they showed up and they were identified, we asked them if they would help us in this symbolic gesture to send these people on to their next phase, or the next place. And so that picture there shows one of them putting the green dots on those thumbprints. And it became this memorial that we did not expect, this healing place. And there's a lot more to this story, including a man who walked by every day and lost a friend, and he made a dot on the tree, the gratitude tree we invited him to represent his friend. And the way that that dot turned out, the paint didn't stick. And the dot is a quarter of an inch. It's very the size of a pea. You know, it's very, very small. And the paint puckered out in like eyes, and where a mouth is, it didn't stick. And there's actually a smile. And we all just looked at each other like, what? And he said immediately, my friend is telling me it's all going to be okay. And I can come back to this dot, right? And give gratitude for the experiences we had. And we're all just like dumbfounded, speechless. You know what I mean? We didn't create this. We were just the vessels. Yeah, it was a profound and still is experience for sure. And I'm so grateful to be invited into it, you know?
Yeah, there's something
I have
special.
goosebumps simply from listening to you. Like, yeah, the energy flows still. Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
I have to say that I've been around, you know, death. Have helped people. Only a couple of people, close friends, and my father pass. And for me, there's a gift exchange in that moment. It's not the person, the living person, or the dying person. It's both together. And so there's something that's irreplaceable about that, that being together in that moments of grief and also healing. I'm sure that you're experiencing that,
Absolutely.
like you said, at the hospital, and
Yeah.
there's nothing better than that, I don't think.
Yeah. And what I'm experiencing with that, and actually right now in this moment, I have a very dear friend who is a literal miracle because she had a cardiac arrest and she survived. Less than 10% of the people survive. And there seems to be pretty much nothing wrong with her. Like, it's really a miracle. And I pulled together community real quick to help support her and the family. And what I noticed with that, with working at the hospital, with this mural, with all of this work, is I feel like it allows people's hearts to raise to the surface, right? And so instead of being busy in our days and our stress and the reality of life, it allows people to expand their hearts to touch each other, these moments like that. And wow, what a gift. I get to help people expand their heart. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. My heart really expands.
Yeah. That's great. An amazing story. And like you said, there's a lot more to this story on your Patreon. So I encourage everybody to go and visit those stories, because there's several of them that illustrate kind of how you help people along in their grief process. Okay, so we wanted, I think, Tatiana, you want to take this question?
You mean the...
about the heretic. Like, how does the heretic? Sorry.
Yes. Okay. Yes. It's okay. So, do you feel it? This heretic energy in yourself, in your life, like you're the one at the same time it is said in human design that we, for example, heretics are bringing practical things that are really functioning good in life, but it is from the other point of view, it could be easily considered as a heresy. How do you feel this aspect of your personality in your life?
I absolutely feel this. And it's funny because I sometimes feel like I'm split in half. I'll call it my business brain and my artist creative brain, and trying to find the balance between the two. And it's because I feel like I need, right, to solve problems and needs out there, right? So it's not just about my own personal creative expression. So where is the balance? I feel like I never have enough time in my art studio just creating for fun. I'm always creating for a purpose. So I think that's the biggest way it comes out, is that my artwork is not beautiful, realistic paintings. I can't even do that if I tried, you know, no realistic landscapes or portraits or whatever. And you can see in the background, my work is abstract and symbolic. And I think that's, when I allow myself to go into my own creative expression, that's what comes out. And then people interpret it for how they need, you know. I hope that answers that a little bit, but I think that's the biggest thing.
I have a follow-up question.
Just a second, I would resume it, that like it's what you're telling now is a typical, the essential 5-1. So it is a solution of course, with your all your creativity inside of it. Yeah, so you're bringing in practical solutions with your creative experience and expressions. Yeah, so it's even, I wouldn't even call it a business side. This is this need of practicality. Yeah,
Yes.
and good implementation. Yeah, at the same time, you're not this is not a usual picture. This is not a landscape, but it is extremely practical. Yeah, the things that you do, they have a place in life and they are needed and they help people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for
Brilliant.
me, from my experience, like since I've embraced, this part of me, the last 11 years, looking for work, I don't fit a job description. Do you know what I mean? Like if I put myself into the job hunting websites, the what is it called? The metrics, they don't work for me. Like they don't find work for me. So that's been sort of the challenging part of this, is how do I fit in into, and make it truly practical for sustainability of myself. And so like on the pictures you've got there's one of me in the hospital. I feel so grateful for that, because it's regular, consistent work that fulfills that part of me. The other two pictures are of the home that we're building on my daughter's property. And even with that, I feel the need to infuse creativity into the practicalness of creating a home that feels really good. Yeah. And that's my daughter and I. We were saging the property. It's a half an acre before the first dig started, and that was to honor those who'd lived there before us, the ancestors of the land, invite whatever doesn't need to be there to go away. You know what I mean? It was really just setting, as a community of her husband, herself, and myself, the land, you know what I mean, and what we were creating together. And then our wishes on the foundation. There's the other picture.
Are you building a tiny home there? Or like,
yeah,
that's nice. We definitely have to invite you one more time, and you have to show it to us. I'd love it.
Yeah. It's not super tiny, but it's definitely tiny. So yeah.
It sounds like a wonderful project, and bringing you more fully into, like you said, the feng shui, intentional home building, something you might explore as another way in to help others, right?
Yes, I have a friend who's a realtor and a home decorator, the one who helped me way long ago when the 24 Friends showed up and helped me pick the colors. And she's helping me do the same for this home. And when she saw what I was doing, she's like, I want you to offer this. I have clients that want this. And so as a manifesting generator, I'm like, oh, there's an invitation.
That's hilarious. So what is this invitation though? Because you said that a couple of times, but it's funny because sometimes manifesting generators do this. They say this because the projectors are the invitations and the generators are the responders. But I hear this from manifesting generators about invitations. So what is it that you heard about invitations?
Well, I guess I should maybe a different word is better, but I definitely need to respond to something.
Yeah.
Right.
It comes to you, comes your way. Yeah.
It might be an invitation, but if it just comes truly, and I've experimented with this, if I just make it up because it's fun and I'm interested in it, it goes nowhere except for my experience. So I need something. So it is my response.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes they confuse the terminologies, and so it's so funny because I'm like, no, wait, that's invitation.
Clarifying that. Yeah, you're totally right. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, nice.
So my follow-up question, actually, I forgot, is related to the chart. So I just wanted to point out that also Moon is opposing Chiron, and this is what you said about the balancing the scientific versus the creative. And I was gonna ask you, because the Moon is sometimes related to your mother. So who is it that's the scientists? Are they both the parents, both the scientists, or is your mother more of the person that kind of persuaded you or kind of steered you into more of the business practicality? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Actually, it's my father. My father was a career scientist, a biochemist and biophysicist and professor, and very black and white in terms of science, which was not who I was. My mother, however, was a nurse, so there's definitely science in there, but she was also, and she's still here, a total creative and an artist. But really the influence came from my father, and my mother agreed. Do you know what I mean? That you can't make it as an artist in the world. That's not practical, which he was doing the best he knew how to do for me. Like, I have no mal feelings about it, right? But it wasn't who I am, and I have figured out how to make it in the world. You know what I mean? But I needed to do all these things I've had to do and have that whole Chiron thing happen, and to get here. Just to add one more thing to reflect back on what you said about sort of later in life, I would say I call myself a late bloomer. Absolutely. Like, I feel like now, when many of my friends are stepping into retirement, I am just like getting my stride. And part of me does not like that. And part of me goes, this is actually super cool. I don't really know how I feel about it, but I'm glad I'm here doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a young spirit.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a young spirit.
And if you're done with your question, Susan, then it is a
Yeah,
good
go
time
ahead.
for my next one. Yeah. So,
Yes.
like, on this optimistic note about late bloomers, which definitely we both are also. It's time to talk about the death, mortality, aging, and how do you feel and experience it in your life for yourself? Yeah, because you're facing it not every day, but every week at your job place, when you
Yeah.
go to the hospital to support people. How you experience it? So you said your friends are already retiring, and you're full of life, full of activities, but still you're not growing younger, yeah, every day. How do you
Exactly.
experience it all?
Yeah. So the way I experience it is in my body, in the vessel that I have, right? Is that keeping that part of me as young as possible is much more work than keeping my spirit and my emotions and my inner part forever young. I think my parents are both like that. They are so young in spirit. So I personally am experiencing just keeping moving, keeping active, keeping everything working, and so grateful for that. I am healthy. I don't have issues really. An old knee injury, but that's been something I've had my whole life. And when I'm in the hospital, boy, does that hit me in the face of how fortunate I am that I have the health I do. The picture on the left, I just turned 64 in March, and I decided, what do I want going forward? And I thought, I want more experiences because I am endlessly curious. And so I put it out there to my little world that by the time I have my last day of being 65, so that's basically 2 years, I want 65 experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so it was an invitation to have an experience. And they're coming to me. And it's really fun, like all kinds of things that I would never probably have done in my life, I've been invited to do. And that's the very first one, which was on my birthday with a friend who invited me to a beautiful lunch that we had. It was very spontaneous. And then the little picture above it is actually something I did when I first got into this healing art method of intentional creativity. And when I wrote those words, they were from a place deep within me, and it was very uncomfortable. It did not feel like me. I was actually embarrassed that I wrote that because I did not resonate with it intellectually, consciously. And I kind of just put it away. But then when I pulled it out later, I was like, this is my mantra. And so it was up on my bedroom wall for the longest time to be like, it's okay to embrace that mysterious, unknown part of myself and even realize there are ancestors guiding me. You know what I mean? So it's funny you picked those two things because they're quite different time frames.
Yeah. So how many experiences have you had?
So far.
So it's been, we're about 6 weeks in, and I think I've had 6 or 7 so far. I'm aiming. I'm aiming. I consider myself a gregarious hermit. I love people, but I need a lot of recharge time. And so about 1 every 2 weeks is the pace that I was aiming for with that invitation, because I don't know if I could energetically do more than that. You know what I mean? It would be draining for me. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Tatiana, you want to go on? I think we might have some time left for the last question. You think?
About the 2027, yeah? You mean?
Yeah, or just the future.
The way
the way the world is going.
Yeah, the way the world is unfolding. Yeah, so in human design, the way Ra told us a story that 2027 will change the life of humanity forever, and we are entering the new phase, and nothing will be the same for us all. But as we are approaching to this date, since at least since 2020, we all notice that the world is changing and changing dramatically. And the way we never saw it maybe before in our history, on or maybe on such a scope or with such an informational support that every corner of the world now knows what goes on the other side of the globe. How do you so if we won't be concentrating on these eschatological expectations that life would get much worse and all the civilization structures would be demolished step by step, and everything, the reality for the humankind will change. How do you receive the things that are happening last at least last 4 years, or maybe you noticed some pattern in it before?
Yeah. And I don't know too much about what's predicted, and that's okay, because I kind of can't even go there. I get overwhelmed. And because you're correct, I default to positive. Like, I am the silver linings woman. That's just the way it is. What I see is, yes, our world is a mess in so many ways. And I believe our cultures are, that's the right even words to say. Our cultures have been trained to not think for themselves in so many ways, and not to default to our bodies can heal ourselves, and that, you know, the earth provides, and all kinds of things that we've re-engineered differently. And I'm, from my experience with my own daughter, is that I feel like many of her generation really sees what's going on, and they are taking the steps no matter what to try to course correct. So that gives me great hope. What's going to happen, I don't know, but it is a time of intensity and stress and confusion and depression and so many difficult things for so many people that I am just dealing with it myself by one person at a time, trying to make a difference, one person at a time in one person's life. Do you know what I mean? That's not hospital work or anything else I do. And I get overwhelmed if I try and overthink it. So I just try and stay right here and let the universe guide me and notice the signs and the signals, and just whatever happens is going to happen. So I can't over prepare, overthink, you know.
So interesting, because Ra always used to say that it's like one person at a time. That was his mantra, remember? One person at a time. And
That's how it means.
and it's also interesting because your nodes are on the Pisces Virgo axis, which is all about just letting the universe, you know, letting the universe guide us versus the proactiveness we need to do to create the situations that we need to create, you know. So it's more about, okay, well, what do we need to fix? And I think you're right, there's this balance between the two. What can we do, and versus what do we just need to trust that our design and the bigger design is set up to do for us. So it's so fascinating how that shows up and how you just responded. And
yeah, like I'm prepared for an earthquake. Do you know what I mean? But bigger picture, I just have to believe that I'm going to say protected, taken care of, will be guided. And if it's my end, it's my end. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I can't live like that. I just can't live in that mindset. So
fearing the future, yeah, it's not, you know, the way you can live normally. So to have fear and what comes next. Do you experience this extra options that you have with your integration channel, that like you all looks like you are a person who always has an extra life, like those cats? Yeah. Do you notice it in your this pattern in your life?
I don't feel like that my Chiron return is the one time in my life when I really felt everything crumbled, like, or not everything, but so much crumbled. I can't say that I've felt that kind of intensity since, but I absolutely get myself in predicaments, I'll say, where I have to be able and willing to make a spontaneous, you know, assess the situation, come up with a strategy, and make some spontaneous, bold decisions, and call in whatever I need to call in to course correct. And I don't dwell on it. I just go there and really, it feels like free falling sometimes. I don't recommend it, you know, I don't. But it seems to be how I'm built. And friends will say to me, well, you like living like on the edge like that. I'm like, no, I actually don't. I crave much more stability than I feel I have. And yet I know I've got everything I need. So I'm not going to think like that. You know what I mean? Anyhow, no, nothing super intense, because I just spring and I throw myself to the next place and trust that I'll land.
And you have, and you have
learn
very brilliantly. So it's worked. And so that's such an inspiration. Tatiana, do you have anything else?
So I suppose the main questions are already discussed. Yeah, so I wanted to add this one with integration. About reading, we spoke already. Yeah.
Yeah, so I see that in your chart too, the whole like living and getting yourself into predicaments that you couldn't have anticipated. And so it's fascinating. And I just want to just say again how inspirational you are, your life and your journey through your Chiron return, and how you've really just leaned in, like you said, to this new adventure because you felt like you really had no choice. And, and you had to lean in or not. And if you hadn't, I don't know if you, so I wonder, you know, sometimes it feels like some people box themselves in and feel like they don't have a choice, and then they get sick. And so, yeah.
Yes, and I have done that, and I have been sick, and I have healed from that. And it took some pretty deep holistic efforts to do that because I was boxed in. That is my sign. Like if my health starts to slip, I am off track.
So that's how we notice. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So your body brings signs that true. Yeah. So you notice it and then you correct your way. And it happened during your Chiron return, especially. Yeah. So
one of the things I try to do before I get out of bed in the morning is ask my body, what do you need today? I don't always remember to do it, but just tell me what you need today. And that's part of my health practices.
Awesome.
That's a good idea, by the way. Just ask your body.
I took it from somebody. It's not my original idea, but I thought it was a good idea too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said during your during the pandemic, you had a group kind of guiding into this self. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. You're not doing that right now, but you said you have a wish to integrate that somehow into your life again. And I think a lot of people do, especially in the human design community, really need something like that. That's why they come to these tools, and you have a variety of things that you give people to help them through this process.
Yes. So when the pandemic hit, once again, I lost all of my business because it was all in person, like so many of us, right? And so I needed to reinvent. So I guess you're right. That was a pretty hard hit, but it's funny. I don't even think of it that way now. And so because I have been on this very intense path of self-exploration the last 11 years, I have tried all kinds of modalities, including human design, which is one of the ones that I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then start testing it, right? And then along with some other ones, including creative practice and intentional creativity, creating with purpose and meaning. And so what I did is I created a 5-month online program I call the Self-Discovery Wisdom School that integrated those 4 different modalities, which were sort of holistic in terms of different parts of our life. So some scientific based about your strengths, which mean and your talents, not the things you're good at, like being an artist or a chef or a musician, the things that you do that give you energy. So you want to do them all the time versus the things we do that deplete us, learning what those are. Learning about when we're in our shadow behaviors. And so we're not in our flow. And, I think we all know when life is going great and we're in our flow, but then we also all know when things like we're out of our flow and things are not going great. And this other part teaches you how to course correct and get back in. I wondered about that for years. So when I found that, and it can be simple for me personally, and again, everybody's different. It's as simple as taking a deep conscious breath, pulling myself back into the present. Like, could that be any easier? It's available to me all the time, right? And then with all of those, doing some creative process that really deepens the learning of all of those so that it becomes second nature, to not even have to think about the things that we've learned, to just like really embody it. So I thought this program that I created was like my life's work. I really did. I loved it. It went great, but the energy in it didn't last. And so it's still on my website, the information about it, because I want it to rise back up. I'd love it to be a group program again. Right now, people are coming to me individually, and I'll do it as individual coaching, but I'm not really out there offering that in the world. But yeah, I still feel like that. I use all of those tools all the time, and they help guide me. There's so many things.
Yeah. Well, you have so many ideas. It must be so hard for you to focus on one. I saw that your chart too. So much ideas and so many things that you can do and that you excel at. So it must be hard to stick to one.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. And so I just kind of ride them. And that's been one of my biggest challenges, is consistency and deepening, whatever it is I'm doing, because I move on to the next amazing thing that's come my way.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you design your website?
Kinda. So I had some help with my initial website. I think this is about the third version, which I actually feel like is out of date. I don't have current things that I'm doing on there. It's still very relevant of who I am and what I do, but kind of it's been a combination of people along with myself. I mean, I can go in and edit it and do some design changes and all that kind of thing, but
yeah.
So inspiring. All the colors and everything. Yeah.
I am a colorful one. Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
So I guess Tatiana, do you have anything else to add? Okay.
I'm done.
So
on my time.
Kerry Lee, you're so inspiring. I could definitely have many conversations with you, and I hope that we are able to collaborate or meet again. And I would just want to say again that Kerry Lee, KerryLeeArt.com is your website, and that we'll link it below. But I definitely encourage everybody to go and look at her website and her offerings, and then to read a little bit more about on her Patreon. I think you have it linked on your website about these stories, because they're very inspirational. I would say if anybody is going through the Chiron return, the intensity of the midlife crisis, and you need that inspiration and that example, that role model, to be honest, I think Kerry Lee's story is such an inspirational one, because she's shown that you just have to lean into your crisis and lean into something, a complete transformation and change that your life is telling you to lean into, and just follow that, and step by step you can build something. I know that there were definite things that you had to do while you were transitioning, but those just led down the path with that intention toward your ultimate life. That sounds very fulfilling to me, the example that you've shown here. So I'm so thankful for you to raise your hand at this time. You're very inspiring to me. I know that you'll be inspiring to others, and it was just such a gift to have you here before our Chiron return episode.
Yes, you're kind of gift to us both. Yeah, inspirational gift. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
Being yourself.
Thank you. I just want to throw in one more little thing. And you made a good point, because this was not a flip of a switch. This has been what I consider a mountain range of ups and downs. And so I took work that was really difficult to do, really uncomfortable. So it was not like an overnight instant change into new life. So grace for ourselves, everyone who's decided to take a self-discovery journey, because it is a journey. Yeah. Thank you for having me, letting me.
Awesome. And we're going to go on to talk about our judgments, and Kerry Lee, you're welcome to stay while we talk. We're just going to close out the show with a few things that are happening to us this week. But yes, we'd love to have you back at some point, and thank you for being with us. So we all transition right now to our judgments, and Tatiana, you will go first this time with your judgments. What's been going on for you this week?
Oh, so it's kind of a bit political stuff, let's put it like this, but I cannot skip such a topic. So already 2 issues of предатели, the traitors on YouTube. This is a Navalny tip. The first one was prepared before he died. Few days before his death, they were ready to put it online, so it was postponed. And these are in two of these films. The Navalny team is trying to explain us how it all happened in Russia in 90s. While I, for example, was myself, I was sitting in a dormitory in a university, and I was pretending that I study philosophy and living my life there. And I was so far away from everything that happened in Russia at that time. I say that politics was something truly distant. Okay, sometimes you can earn some money during the political campaigns, because I was studying philosophy, and we had friends who were doing the political studies, and they were always involved in some kind of stuff. But here, the most interest, it is truly interesting to watch it all, to hear all this difficult facts for us. So, for example, Khodorkovsky, who now received as a Christ figure, who suffered 10 years of prison because of Putin's jealousy and everything. But he himself is shown from the other side in this film. The most interesting is the reaction of Russian-speaking community around the world, and in Russia, of course. Because a lot of people are thinking that now the people who are on the opposite political side, who are in opposition to Putin's regime, are using the same tools of propaganda that Putin uses on a daily basis. So now they are using these tools to show how bad our policy. So the story of Russia in the 90s was how terrible was Yeltsin and what he's done to our economy and our political stuff, and how democracy was killed already in 1994 or 96. And we were pretending since that Russia is a democratic country. And the reaction is unbelievable. So many discussions, people are against it. Somebody says, yes, that's true, she's showing us what happened to our poor country. And the other side, no, she's using the same tools and propaganda. And this is not what Navalny was thinking about. And they are turning everything into a completely different direction. You cannot imagine. So Russian segment of internet is now full. Everybody wants to comment, to say something bad or good. And this is not only two first. So they at least one more would follow. One more part would follow, telling how it all led to Putin coming into power. I'm reading news every day, but I'm not that much into politics. I'm sitting 2,000 kilometers away from all of this, but I'm Russian, of course. But the reaction and how our the Russian community, Russian-speaking community, is building different camps and different points of view, and there is no homogenization yet in this sphere. There are so many Russians with so many different positions on it. It's unbelievable. Even here, the democratical side, the oppositional side, is not united against the big enemy. No, they feel other people as enemies also. Yeah.
It's the state of our. Navalny, can you give some context to people that might not know about Russian politics? I can't believe that they wouldn't, but can you give a little bit of context about what the Navalny was representing and that for the audience?
Yeah, so Navalny was considered to be the one and only proper opponent for Putin, because he was demonstrating the whole his life, he was demonstrating that he is not scared and not afraid of this terrible person, and he was able to arrange to receive a cult and leader status in it, and he was inspiring people to fight against Putin's regime, and to do whatever is possible to protest, to show themselves. And he started to be a huge leader during the protest time of 2011, 2012. And then later he was poisoned by Novichok poison. It happened in Russia, but luckily he was saved and transported to Germany. He was here in Berlin and Charité clinic, and but as soon as he recovered, more or less, he decided to go back to Russia.
Why do you think he decided to do that?
So I see some explanations, some justifications of it, that that's how he was, the person he was, and he died in February this year. It was a huge and really sad event for all of us. I personally, my own opinion, I didn't see any reason to come back to this regime, and it was a direct road towards death. But some people are explaining it. No, he wanted to be with his people. He wanted to show, to set an example how he could protest, and he survived during these 2.5 years of terrible conditions in prison. So this was not only simply a prison. He was in especially terrible condition and actually tortured psychologically and even physically sometimes. But he was showing his strengths in it. I don't know. Some people are supposing that around him there were people who were like lobbying his return to Russia with the help of KGB, okay, FSB, so our secret service agents. Nobody knows the truth, but he came back to Russia after he was arrested immediately. And he died in February, and it was a personal tragedy for all Russians who are against Putin regime. And now his team is trying to continue, his wife is trying to continue the things, the movement that he started, and his team is issuing these films on YouTube to tell Russians about our story, how it all led to Putin to come in power.
Yeah, and so then your surprise is that, because I think it's happening in the US too. And so you're like, well, can't they just see what's happening? Can't they just see? And then you think that people are going to have a similar response because it's so apparent about what happens. And then all of this other types of propaganda that divides everybody into camps. Is that what you're, Tatiana? Is that what you're saying, that you're just surprised that it's become so divided into more than two camps?
Yeah, so even though these films are bringing a lot of facts which were more or less known, but the reaction itself, it's so my husband, for example, he doesn't want to watch it just because like there is no reason to watch. And some people are saying, no, she's right, and that's the thing that should be done. I don't know what to say. Like it is definitely not uniting everybody around the idea of new Russia that could come. But still, I see the place for such things, for us to see clearly our past, to understand where we are all going.
Interesting. Well, it's very symbolic to, I think, our times, and how surprising it is, I think, to us to understand all, or to observe as 5-1s observers in our environment. We're a little bit more, and I think Kerry is also this, we're kind of on the outside looking in, and so we're observers, and sometimes we just it's very shocking, and the ways that we can synthesize thing is very interesting. The opportunities to synthesize is so great because we have that outsider's perspective, that observation of what you're just describing, Tatiana. It's just like, oh my God, I really thought this was going to happen, and this was going to unite us. And then I'm seeing all of these different factions. And it sounds like maybe, and I'm just going to invite you, Tatiana, to process this a little bit more, because I feel like one of the gifts that we have is being that outsider's point of view and offering something practical after we've processed it, as a point of view, as a seeing in for other people, to universalize that. So I'm going to invite you to seed that idea into you, to process it a little bit more and see what comes out.
Yeah, that's the best approach, I suppose, in this situation. By the way, Putin is also 5-1.
He's
Manifestor.
definitely a heretic and
Yeah.
an authoritarian. We can go both ways. Yes, there's definitely, we're not all that great. It's for the others to decide what they're going to bring us into, generals or, authoritarians. All right. So my judgment, we flip-flopped this week. I was like, I gotta do something that's more positive because here I am, the
Yeah,
judger.
please do.
So, and I had this perfect opportunity. It's perfect for this episode. And it just kind of fell in my lap because I have a mentorship program right now with another astrologer, and her name is Ann Ortley, and she's a projector. She's a 2/4 projector. I had no idea about all of this until I went for somebody invited me to do a reading with her, and I liked her, but I didn't really see, she when I first viewed her, she was in Astrology Hub, and she was super smart and funny. But I didn't initially kind of I liked her, but I didn't see the connection. I didn't gravitate toward her. She didn't have she didn't have any a school or anything, but it was interesting because I was invited to a reading and she told me so much in that reading. And she also invited me to study with somebody, and it was such a good advice. And she told me a lot of things. If you ever want to have an astrology reading, she's one of the top astrologers, and I would invite you to have a reading with her because she has so much knowledge. And she invited us to watch this film, and it's called A Resurrection. It's a kind of an old-timey film. It's with Ellen Bernstein. I love Ellen Bernstein, and I was like, okay, I'll watch this. But I would have never watched this unless she had invited me to it. It's a little sappy, and it's kind of it's kind of a little bit of a sappy film, but I really got a lot out of it. And basically what it was is this woman went through this experience where she was living her life, and she had bought her husband. They had a really good relationship, bought her husband this sports car, and they went out on a ride, and they had this accident. She became paralyzed in this accident and lost her husband, the love of her life, and she had ran away from home. You find this out as it goes on. I'd invite you to watch this film. But it basically, she came back to life, went back home, and found that she was paralyzed and had to kind of reinvent herself in a way. But she found out she had healing powers, and through the healing powers, she healed herself. And then also during this time, she had this really great gift to heal others, but people started projecting on her, and they made all of these projections about, how she should, from the religious camps, how she should claim her powers to be God inspired. She had this young man fall in love with her, but then again was projecting on her that she was some kind of saint. And throughout this time, she was like, I'm just doing what I was given. There's nothing special about me. I have this gift and I'm giving it back. And finally, she ends up leaving, and she ends up going to a place that she can live on the down low and do her thing and heal people that come to her, but they don't know that she's done anything. She's just living her life and she's healing. It was such an inspiring story. And I don't know that she meant this other than this is a transformation of healing and a Chiron journey. She gave this gift to me in particular. There were a couple of people going through this Chiron return, but not many people in our mentorship program. But the 5-1 projection was just so fascinating that kind of came into this, and I'm not sure if she was aware of it or not. But I was just really blessed by it, and it's a little bit old-fashioned or kind of sentimental, but I would say it was a really good film to watch. And if you love Ellen Bernstein like I do, you should go and watch it. It's an inspiring film. So that's it. So what a great episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
Yeah, me too.
And please,
hopefully Kerry, you too.
Yes. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Yes.
And visit Kerry Lee's website. And I also would invite you, if you are a heretic, even if you don't have the profile of a heretic and you want to be in our show, I would invite you to also fill in the questionnaire that I'm going to leave and link to at the end of this show. And if you think anybody would benefit from this show, please have them watch it and subscribe. And also, if you have a heretic friend that would has an inspiring story, I would ask you to also, direct them here and submit their birth time so we can look at their profile just for thematic purposes. That's all we want to do, so that we can invite you to the show, because we'd really love to have more collaborators here. It's a lot more fun.
And please be with us in 2 weeks later. We are preparing for our Chiron return that comes next week. And we're going to be talking about this amazing and difficult topic in 2 weeks. So we're preparing ourselves, and hopefully it will be interesting for you all, for everybody who's approaching this turning point of our lives.
Yeah.
When we start blooming.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Ciao, Cacao. Go, Kerry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was amazing.
Thank you. I really
talk to you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.